Hello, it is Thursday, the 18th of November. I am Conor Hamilton, and this is the Seasiders Podcast Thursday night preview show. In today's show, we are previewing the mighty Blackpool's trip to Swansea on Saturday. There is a slight change of our running order tonight, as our wonderful guest from SwansCastMedia isn't able to join us until around 9 o'clock. Therefore, we've started at 8:30 and we'll be running through the international break, our injuries, and how that affects our much beloved team selection process. We'll then hopefully, fingers crossed, be joined by our guest fan for a Q&A at 9 o'clock. But for now, we're joined by the wonderful accredited journalist and new Lancs Live reporter, Sean McGinley. Congratulations, Sean, on your new role.
Thank you. I've got an inch of credibility now with what I'm saying. Although, just think the amount of shit I've been saying on here, I'm now going to be just spreading it multiple times a day all over your timelines for you all to see.
So no change from normal service then?
Exactly, Conor.
And then we're also joined by the main man himself, the wonderful Tom. Hello, Tom.
Evening, Conor.
Yeah. I was hoping you would put your last name on the kind of name display so everyone get the wonderful pun I just did, but you weren't going to indulge me, and I respect that.
Shouldn't have sent me the script.
So before we go into team selection, I thought we might begin by reviewing everybody's favourite thing about football, the international break.
I love it now. It's great.
Sean, the Scotland fan, getting chirpsy when they get a bit of success.
Yeah.
But while it was a very eventful World Cup qualifiers for Scotland, it was a surprisingly quiet one for Blackpool. Shane Lavery was obviously injured, unable to represent Northern Ireland. Chris Maxwell also injured, probably wouldn't have got a look in anyway. Tom, what does Chris Maxwell need to do in the next year to get close to a place for the World Cup? Because he seemed...
well, not much more apart from being selected, really. It's a bit of a joke. But, we see him week in, week out, and these guys should be obviously looking at least putting him into the squad for experience. He's got a lot of Football League experience and technically big game experience across his career. And not only that, top clean sheets last year, he was outstanding with his shot stopping. He's becoming much more of a commanding goalkeeper, and he doesn't need to do much more. He's doing it in the Championship now, isn't he? He's up there in the top 3, I think it is, for goal saving saves as well. So for me, he hasn't got to do anything more, and it'll be sod's law that he hits a bad run of form or something and he'll never get picked. But let's hope that's not the case. But he deserves a chance to be in the squad at least.
If he isn't picked, we'll all go and storm the Welsh Parliament on his behalf.
I was going to say, I was going to say on Maxwell, obviously, we're kind of banging the drum for him with Wales. I was trying to think about it in the international break there's been about sort of how he does get in. And I think it's sort of a change in international football, the way that it seems to be. Like if you look at Scotland and Wales recently, they're kind of building like a club mentality and sort of keeping those sort of solid foundations that they've had. People that they know within the squad, obviously. Talking on a Scotland perspective, there's Stephen O'Donnell at right back who isn't really performing for Motherwell at the moment in Scotland, and there's other right backs that should probably be ahead of him on form, but Steve Clarke trusts him. He knows he's been around the squad. He knows he's good in the dressing room, and he's creating that sort of club mentality. And I think Wales are trying to do something similar, and that's probably where Chris Maxwell misses out. And I've said before, and I keep saying this, that I think potentially Maxwell's first international call-up will be for Scotland rather than Wales. You look at the quality of Wales keepers, but more importantly, the age of the Scotland keepers at the moment. Craig Gordon's number 1, but he's got about a year left in the Premiership. You've got Alan McGregor's already retired from international duty, so it really wouldn't surprise me if Chris Maxwell ended up with a Scotland call-up, to be honest, if you're looking at the quality at least of the Wales keepers. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, obviously he should be in, but it just seems to be I'd hope he never plays again, to be quite honest, O'Donnell, but there you are. It is what it is.
I respect the commitment there, Sean, in managing to turn a question about Wales into an answer about Scotland.
I did.
That is a wonderful commitment to the brand right there.
Thank you very much.
going to say is an interesting question. Coming in from Nigel, does Maxwell get his place back automatically? It's a no-brainer for me. I think he does. I think Grimshaw's done an incredible job, but I don't know how you feel about that, Conor.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Maxwell gets his place back automatically simply because of what he did last season. I think he still has so much points in the bank from that for me. That he certainly. I think he deserves his place back until he does something wrong that isn't just being unfortunate enough to get injured.
Yeah, I think with Maxwell, the Grimshaw, I was kind of looking at Grimshaw, and he's on par, I think, in terms of a general shot stopper, a general goalkeeper, I think, with Grimshaw. But if you're looking at potentially weaknesses in his game compared to Maxwell, I think his distribution can be a bit tentative at times in terms of the pace at which he distributes the ball. I think in games, the last 2 games in particular, I've kind of seen where we've had moments where we could counter quite quickly and get the ball up the pitch, and he is a little bit hesitant in that regard. And I think Maxwell, because Maxwell's so good at that area of the game, it really kind of makes any standard keeper stand out as that potentially being a weakness in the system. And I think Maxwell doing that in the system is really important. So yeah, for me, he as soon as he's ready to go, he's back in. But I think as far as Critchley said on Thursday, it seems like it may come too soon this weekend.
Yeah, just a point from David. I don't think he's done, as we've just discussed, anything
wrong.
He's the club captain, and I think he brings a bit more than just being a goalkeeper to the pitch as well. He always speaks to the referee. He always organises the back four really well, and he is just a part of that core team that bleeds success for us at the moment. So, as Conor said, I think he needs to make an actual mistake or a string of mistakes before someone else gets introduced. But for me, as our club captain for a reason, and he needs to come back ASAP as soon as he's ready.
But I think one thing that I'm really happy about as a fan now is I think we can all, as a fan base, have incredible confidence that there's no longer that key man risk in the goalkeeping department. We have a very, very competent, very, very able backup in Grimshaw who, has performed so well. We're asking questions like this. And that's
he's almost performing too well, isn't he? He's performing too well for a second choice keeper to the point where they'll be interested in him in January, and that's where you sort of balance comes with second choice keepers, isn't it? I imagine now, because he's staked his claim, he wants to be more of a rotational keeper than just simply a backup now.
Yeah, as you just said, Sean, he's made 3 or 4 key saves now. Reading, I think, made a decent save against Preston. He made an incredible save at Sheffield United as well. Like you say, he's generally been a big sort of game player, to be fair to him. Like the save against Reading was at 2-0 down, wasn't it? And Sheffield United was as they were battering us as well. So, and he's also got an assist against Sheffield United as well. So, like you say, he's done an incredible job.
Yeah. And speaking of players who maybe haven't done an incredible job, Tyrese John-Jules missed out for the England under-21s, allegedly due to injury, but given the lack of any injury reporting locally, I'd be surprised if form and playing time didn't also factor into it. Sean, do you think that break will do him a bit of good to kind of rest and recover, or just further dent his confidence?
No, I think it did done him a favour. I just think he doesn't necessarily fit our system. I think that the way that he likes to play, he likes to sort of drift in sort of the half spaces in and around in between the lines, really, and sort of even out of possession. He likes to be that player that sort of will find the space, not necessarily do the off the ball work as much as necessary. Although I must say, I don't like the idea that people are putting about that he's somehow lazy or he doesn't work hard enough for the team. He puts his work in pressing. I think that sometimes people can see pressing as, well, it's someone who's running about a lot means that they're good at pressing. That's not necessarily the case. I think he's good at picking his moments of when to press. You saw it against Fulham, you saw it against Middlesbrough in the cup game, that he knows when to press. He knows the right triggers of when to turn over possession, and he's created a lot of chances from it. He's just quite indecisive in front of goal. He's a little bit naive in his passing, and I think that perhaps the championship came a bit too soon for him. But I think that he would work better in a side that allows him to not have to focus as much on the off-the-ball work. All our game is around the off-the-ball work. So a player that I think could probably thrive in a system where there's less defensive responsibility. So I just think he might just not fit with what we want him to do. I think Critchley kind of thought he could mould him into that, and there's still time to do that, but I'm not necessarily sure that he'll come into this sort of as a player that we can use in the back end of the season.
Fair enough. So I think it's safe to say not many people will be advocating for him to be picked in our team selection. Speaking of which, Tom, can we get up the wonderful team selecting tool? And we'll begin the process of making all the wrong decisions that the internet hates us for, but we stand by it anyway.
Can you see that okay?
I can add it to the stream, and there we go.
I was going to say, do you want to run through the sort of the team news first, and then we can see who we can actually pick?
Yeah, I'm thinking we might do that by position.
Right, okay, no worries, yeah.
So, first of all, formation. Do we want to stick with the Neil Critchley classic 4-4-2, or switch it like he has to the 4-2-3-1 we've been seeing in recent weeks?
4-2-3-1, I think, for me. I think it's worked well, even though obviously we've kind of got less points in the last couple of games. I think we've played, particularly against QPR, probably our best football. So I would go with the 4-2-3-1.
Tom, your view?
Yeah, I think there was at points against Stoke where I can't even remember if we started with 4-2-3-1. I think we did. Where I kind of wish we didn't. But then as sort of the games went on and we obviously the QPR game, we were just incredible. So for me, I agree with Sean. I think we should go with that and see if it works early doors. I sometimes like us going into the 4-2-3-1 to make an impact on the game if we're at 0-0 or controlling the match and then make the impact with the 4-2-3-1. But if I had to make a decision, then 4-2-3-1 was probably where we're most effective.
All right. So it looks like we're going to a 4-2-3-1 then.
What's your opinion?
I quite like the 4-2-3-1 simply because it means there's less space for Gary Medine and it'll wind John and Mitch Cook's left foot up. Okay, goalkeeper. We know that Maxwell's back in training, but Swansea's probably coming too soon, according to the press conference earlier today. So I assume Grimshaw has to be a shoe in there.
Yeah,
absolutely. After all of that.
I know.
At centre back, Ollie Casey is out after a couple of weeks of injury, but I'm not sure he was ever in the picture anyway. And Richard Keogh is apparently close to a return, but won't be back for Swansea, so he's out the picture as well. Bearing that in mind, Tom, who would you say your first choice centre back would be?
The first choice is pretty simple. It's Big Marvs. I don't think there's a question about it, obviously.
Yeah, obviously the same. Yeah, with Marvin as the number 4. And then I think I would go with Gretterson as the left centre half alongside Marvin. He's had his games now with Iceland. He can't say he's not up to match speed. As much as I think it was a bit of an overreaction to say that Husband's suddenly amazing at centre half because he played once there against QPR and didn't make a mistake or do anything really. Don't think there was much pressure on him. I think that QPR didn't really feed the ball to Lyndon Dykes as much as they could have. Don't think they made the most out of their attacking play, and I don't think he was really under any significant pressure, to be honest. And I think that he's much better suited to left back, and we have a competent centre half there that's never let us down when he's played. So I think it's a no-brainer for me that Gretterson should be there ahead of, with Marvs in the longer term if we've got centre halves that injured. Yeah,
no, I fully agree with that. I think last season we were an advocate for that centre back partnership, weren't we, Sean? We looked, in my opinion, the most solid when those two played, and they know each other's games. So I don't think we've taken any risks. And as you say, Conor, I don't think Case was in there anyway, and I wouldn't play Husband. The moment they started putting actual balls into the box, even though it was a couple of times towards the end of the match, they actually should have potentially scored from that and got the winner. So for me, you play Gretterson and Marvs. So
yeah, I think as well. Oh, sorry, go on, Conor.
No, I'd agree with that, and I think the other thing that's really important there is, while I might be tempted to disagree with you, I can't this week because obviously with the injury to Garbutt, he's meant to be out for a couple of weeks with a ligament issue. It means that, we've got one less left back, and maybe we want to be saving either James Husband or Reece James for that role.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's harsh on Reece James, obviously, because Reece James had a really good game against QPR. But I mean, obviously, James Husband is a better left back than Reece James. He's been one of our best. I said he was player of the month last month at left back. I think as well. It's not. I'm not saying James Husband is bad at centre half. I'm just saying there's better options there because there's natural centre halves that have better positional sense. I still
he's
bang the
not
drum for the fact that Husband reacts off the ball as if he's playing at left back still with his pressing. He's quite rash in pressing, quite rash in positional sense. And that's not his problem. That's not his fault because he's not a centre half. So I think little things like that are where you kind of, in games like this in particular, against teams that like to play on the floor and sort of will play in and around the edge of the box, that's where you need to really be competent and really need to be concentrated in when you're timing your tackles and things like that. And I think that Husband's better suited at left back in that regard.
Yeah. Absolutely spot on. He's not a centre back in my opinion. I mean, I know he was there a couple of times last season, but for me, when you've got other options, as I spoke about already, that's much better than him, and he's better at left back. I think it's stupidity to play him there, but I'm not one to question Critchley at all. But
there's a bit of dissent in the comments around Iceman being included. Somebody thinks he was actually quite poor in the international break. Richard also pointing out we have Callum Connolly, who ubiquitous in the first couple of weeks in the season and has disappeared since.
I think it's the fact that we have to push Marv across to the left that makes it harder to fit Connolly. And I don't like to move Marv when he's in probably the form of his life and he's just getting better and better. I find it hard to sort of displace Marv, even if it is just shifting across to the left-hand side.
I'm not sort of arguing with that comment, but we saw him literally last season, and when those two played together, they were exceptional. So for me, I can't see how you can not be sold on him because you watched him sort of midweek. No disrespect, but for me, they are the best options they've got. They know each other's game, and I think Grettison's going to be a very decent defender for us if he actually gets a run of games. So I think they're the partnership you have to play.
I think as well, Marv is, if you play with Marv by your side, you're instantly going up 2 points, I think, in terms of your performance. It just naturally happens for everyone. So any sort of, if he has a flaky moment, say, and because he's not played for a while or whatever, Marv is the perfect person to have there to very quickly ease him back into the game.
Right, we can left back next.
Left back, Husband or James?
For me, James had an incredible game against QPR for someone that hasn't played for ages, and he got slated at the start of the season for playing centre mid. But I completely agree with Sean. He was one of my player of the month last month, and he definitely doesn't deserve to be dropped. So for me, it's Husband.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the same. Husband. Yeah, definitely Husband. I think, as you say, we know that Reece James can be someone that we're going to be able to rely on. Again, it's another reliable person, especially if Garbutt's out for a few weeks now. It's a busy Christmas period, so I think they'll probably rotate, if anything, Husband and James throughout the next couple of months.
Yeah. And at right back, Jordan Gabriel's been putting in some excellent performances, but Dujan Sterling is now back and fit.
I dare to even say potentially Sterling might start. Which was the game we won, Sheffield United, wasn't it? We last did the preview show together. It wasn't a case of me saying Sterling should start over Gabriel, just I think he might come in. But for me, he's our most formed player at the moment, and his game against QPR was in my opinion, one of his best in Tangerine. Full stop. I think it was absolutely incredible, and he's getting better but game by game. So for me, you can't drop someone like that.
Yeah, I think with him as well, I was kind of the idea that Sterling will naturally take that place back over time anyway because of his ability. Now I'm not so sure. I think that in the past few games, Gabriel has really stepped up and become a player that I feel like we can rely on more and more. And I love Jordan Gabriel, obviously, and I've sort of banged the drum for him last season over and over. And it was just a case that I thought Dujan Sterling was so good, and then suddenly Gabriel's just upped the levels again, where you thought perhaps he sort of reached where you were expecting him to be, and he just has to start. And until he makes a mistake, really, I don't see how Sterling gets back in.
Yeah, he's He's utter class, and he's immediately got that connection with the fans as well. And like you say, that a bit like Marv's, that just lifts everybody on the pitch as well. So he's that energy we desperately need as well across the back line. So simple decision for me.
We completely agree. Comments agree with you as well, guys. For me, it's also influenced by the fact that in my Football Manager 2022 save, he is consistently the hardest working person in training. And, got to go with what you know.
I can add arrows to this.
Arrow.
Oh, look at that.
Ah,
Hold
showing
on.
showing he's going to rampage up the pitch. Excellent.
Look at that. Come on.
The tactical analysis in the preview show is taking new heights.
Right. Iceman playing back. Marv's can be balanced.
All right. So
we move on. Number 7 on the weird sheet. So I don't know what's going in that order, but
no, we'll go with the double pivot first. 7 and 8.
Absolutely.
Kevin Stewart, niggling ankling problem, going to see a specialist. Seems to be persistent injuries with Kevin Stewart. Line up aside, do you think we need another centre mid in January just because Stewart never seems to be available?
I think we need 2 now. Yeah, I think we need 2, really. We needed 1 anyway. I think we've been crying out for a ball-winning midfielder at times, so that in games where we really need to control the midfield, we can sort of drop out of having a number 10 at all and having the defensive midfielder instead. But I do worry that perhaps this is something that has been persistent and it's been the root of his injuries, and that it's potentially going to be a long-term thing now with Kevin Stewart. I think Kevin Stewart's been class whenever he's played, but you can't rely on someone like that. And I'm sure he's not on a little wage either. He's got pedigree in the game. I think that perhaps probably come the end of the season, he probably won't be a Blackpool player anymore, just because if it carries on going at this rate, we can't afford to do that.
No, he's taken up a valuable squad space, and he's playing for 1 or 2 games at a time. And I think Tim mentioned a few weeks ago against Fulham, it was him and Winter that played, wasn't it? And they were absolutely class. And he, as Sean said, brilliance on the pitch. But Tim said something along the lines of, I think we'll have to deal with the fact it's going to play 25 games or so, and we just have to accept that. But we're not going to even get that out of him, and you can't really have that when there'll probably be better options in January available. And we already needed, like as Sean said, another one, so we can't rely on just the 2 playing every week. And just credit to Wintle and how well he's done from starting immediately to playing every single game. But just to comment on the centre mid situation, and it's not really much of a moan, but I'm getting a bit frustrated with. I know he's a squad player and he wants to go, but Dougal going to Australia every week and not even getting, a half. It's just he's travelling all this way, and I appreciate he will want to go, and it's just one of those things. But he keeps getting selected and coming back, and it's just a risk to us, even more so, in my opinion.
I think it's a COVID thing. As we think of the environment we're in at the moment, it's the Australia coach is picking him for squads that he ultimately doesn't see him playing in, and you're making him travel across the world, putting the both bubbles at risk of players coming into new settlings. And if he comes back and he's got a positive COVID case and he gets into the squad, then it's like, this isn't worth the risk of doing it. But at the same time, it's his first games in front of a crowd. He probably was hoping to get a few, even if he got 30 seconds on the pitch, that'd be worth it for him. It'd be the same for us if it was our nation. So I completely understand why Dougal does it. I just think it's a bit harsh from the Australian management, the way they're sort of managing him at the moment.
It's not on Dougal, as I said, it's just harsh on them. Like, there was all the hype around him, obviously, after promotion, and he started, and all of a sudden it's just not being played at all, maybe a couple of minutes at the end. And for me, it's not going to affect Dougal in the same way it affects us fans. And I wanted to see him start, and that'd be great. But like you say, it's not exactly around the corner, is it? Exactly.
Yeah, and it is on my bucket list for him to play alongside Tom Rogic at some point in life, to be honest. So just on a personal perspective, so that'll happen one day. But
just on those 7 and 8, we haven't got any other choice than Wintle and Dougal anyway, have we?
Yeah, it's a dynamic duo.
No.
Unless we
here comes trouble, make it double.
I was going to say we address the Morrison comments about Wintle.
Absolutely
positive. Yeah.
Very good.
Morrison's a very uninspiring appointment for me. I think he's going to kind of carry on the same mould at Cardiff. They won't need a central midfielder who's a good ball player or a good ball winner if they're just going to be playing direct football and bypassing the central midfield anyway. So he seems like it'd be more valuable of a process for him to stay with us until the end of the season. And by the end of the season, I think we'd be in a position to sign him permanently. So,
well, if that's
perfect news
the
for us.
attitude, we might even be signing him in January now.
No, exactly, yeah.
But I think it's very blasé of the manager to say that anyway. He literally just come out and said, yeah, basically just stay. Whether it's mind games or whether he will be just calling him back and he's just said it, I don't know, but it doesn't seem that way at all.
Yeah, I've got to hope it's going to be another situation where, like Jordan Gabriel, where he feels unwanted by the parent club and wants to make the move up to the seaside.
Absolutely.
Okay, number 6 and number 9. Fantastic news that CJ Hamilton is back fit. He played a full 90 against Everton in the friendly last week. I mean, I assume he's got to slot right in and take one of these spots for his own. Or cousin CJ.
Cousin CJ. Yeah, it's interesting now because I feel like I was a bit harsh on him now at the start of the season, but ultimately I felt he was a little bit lightweight and a little bit too one-dimensional for this level at the start of the season. But now when you read his comments about the fact that he was literally, anytime he did even a vague turn on the pitch, he felt like he was in seething pain. It's kind of like he's got a clean slate for me again now to start up again. But obviously, I'd be bringing him in very gradually into the process because think of the impact CJ's made off the bench in the past. I'm sure he'll be able to do it again if he's back to his best. But I'd put Bowler in the number 9 for this one.
Yep. Yeah, completely agree. I think CJ got a goal as well, didn't he? So, but that's scary impact to have. As I was criticising him a lot, but as Sean said, I didn't realise he was all like it was niggling him every point. I think it's a bit like the Medina effect, only playing like 20 minutes here and there because it's just too much of a risk. So, if he is back to how he was when we first had him, then it's going to be some scary. Some scary substitution for the opposition, and if he obviously gets a starting place as well, so a good option to have.
Yeah, and I think as well with they were only planning on playing him for half of that Everton game, but because of injuries elsewhere on the pitch, he ended up playing the full game, and he felt like that was the best thing for him anyway. So he's clearly up to speed really to make an impact.
Yeah,
we'll put him in the impact subcategory along with Owen Dale. Owen Dale's throne as the impact sub is coming under threat. Number 6. For me, it's got to be Keshi Anderson.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's got to be. I think that's mainly because Carey's forced his way into the side, and I think that it's just a really good option to have him there. And Keshi has obviously made that left wing slot his own. I think he's changed his positional sense a lot since moving into there. I think he's smarter with the way that he moves off the ball in particular. And I mean, his pressing game's improved a lot as well from that left-hand side because it's forced him to put in more yards off the ball. And I think that's helped him in being able to improve as a number 10 as well.
Yeah, sorry, Karen, Conor.
No, the other thing there is it looks like Lavery might be back as well, and that they just connected so well on the left-hand side, which is very, very exciting to see.
Finesse, isn't it? That's the first and last time I'll do that.
They got him off.
As Sean just said, I think Keshi coming in that left, specifically I remember sort of Middlesbrough just because I was at the game and I've watched a couple of them back. He's kind of recreating that left wing position though because he kind of drifts in then drifts out and he's becoming really hard to mark. And like you said, his press and he increases the tempo as well. But add to that, I'm assuming we're going Keshi and Carey. But Carey, when he came on against QPR, I said it before, and I said it at Reading when he started. I can't quite get my head around. He played for Kings Lynn, and now he's starting against Championship sides, and he looks a cut above already. Coming on against QPR, he looked sensational. Obviously, unlucky when he hit the post as well, but he's going to be some incredible player. And I will have no fears, just as Critchley didn't, to start him as well because he's exactly what we need in that team.
Oh, Keshi, put him in, sign him up, finesse in it.
That's worse than mine. So.
I know. I figured I'd bail you out there by going one worse. Carey, and then at striker, is it Gary Goals? Is it Lavery?
Is it
Yates?
I think probably Lavery will be on the bench. It's Yates for me. I think that as we said against QPR, I picked as much as John tried to make out on the post-match show that I hated the idea of Medine up front for that QPR game, I actually selected Medine in the preview show, I'll have you know, and I was the first to come up with it in the 4-2-3-1 because we needed that physicality up top against QPR defence, who are known for their physicality and height. And I think, if anything, you saw the amount of aerial duels he had against QPR, that was an important factor of getting us up the pitch, because it allows us to be less one-dimensional in our play going forward, so that we're able to bypass the press at times. QPR are a good pressing side. Sometimes you just need to play a direct ball up top against a side like that. I think Swansea are a little bit more passive on the ball. I think that if you have runners, I mean, think about last season against MK Dons, who Russell Martin was manager of at the time. You look at the way that we played there. Yates was pivotal to how we worked off the ball against his side. He's took the exact same system and set up to Swansea. They're playing the exact same way. You need a lot of runners off the ball to really stop their progress at the back in trying to keep possession in tight areas. So it's got to be Yates for me. I mean, 2 goals in 15 doesn't inspire confidence either, but there you go. I'll leave that one to the end.
You're being heckled and reviled in the chat there, Sean. Tom,
I know, I had a bit of a bite back.
Does that reaction deter you much, Tom, or do you agree?
Me and Sean are going to get named for sticking up for each other in this pod, but I'm a huge fan of Jerry Yates. Everyone knows that, and I think Sean's spot on. I think if we play Gary Medine, it will suit Swansea 10 times more than it did QPR, because they're very passive in the back areas of the pitch. Not so like slow, but they just like to keep the ball. And I think if we rush them into, if we get our press right, then we will start to create some chances, and we maybe gifted a couple of opportunities. And I think if we play Medine, although it will disrupt them in terms of aerial threat, I think it will suit them a lot better, and they hit us harder on the counter attack and much more risk of conceding or us definitely conceding chances. So for me, it's Yates as well. And if we are, drawing or we are up, then Medine's the perfect substitution to bring on amongst others on the bench.
Yeah, I think now, I think we've settled. For me, I've settled on a when I'm going to play Medine and when I'm going to play Jerry Yates. I'm going to play Medine against teams that are high pressing, and sometimes you need to bypass the midfield to get the ball up top, to stick it out and give us an out ball to get up the pitch. But against teams like this who like to control the ball, they're not necessarily as much about their off the ball work. They're more about controlling possession within their own thirds. I think it's really important that you've got runners in the team, and Yates is the best off the ball player in the side. In the squad, probably the best off the ball player we've had since that I can remember. So I think it's a no-brainer for me that he's correct for this specific game against Swansea. But Medine definitely has his uses against more physical opponents.
Yep.
Okay, so we are going on the piss with Jerry Yates rather than attending the Gary Medine Fight Club.
Christ.
And that
he doesn't like mushrooms, so loses a point for me.
And that's what it comes down to in the Seasiders Pod preview show. Do you like mushrooms or not? Sean, I hope you ask all our new signings that in your new role as Lankside.
I know, yeah. Or if they think ketchup is an elite condiment, which James' husband obviously does.
Good patter from the Blackpool squad. Right, so that is our lineup. We'll tweet it out afterwards so it can receive the usual amount of abuse and criticism. Please do send
much more. There's no Medine. There's much more abuse this time. It'll be great. John will tweet out it and then abuse his own tweet.
But I'm very, very excited because we're now excited to be joined by Luke from SwansCast. Hopefully you can all now see him on your screens. He is here to help answer many of our questions about the very distinct brand of football now being played at Swansea City, and how Swansea fans are viewing that. So, welcome, Luke.
Hiya, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming. So, just to kick us off, can you tell us a bit more about how you became a Swansea fan and how you got involved with SwansCastMedia?
Yeah, I'll start off. Just a heads up though. I've got a bit of a sore throat, so if my voice goes up or down, that's why. But funny story how I became a Swans fan. My parents never really liked football, so I got in perhaps quite a bit later than a lot of people. I would say perhaps about 13, 14. But basically started a paper round delivering the local newspaper up where I lived. And obviously on the back pages, you'd have the local team. At the time, we were in League One under Roberto Martinez. So I just sit down before my paper round and start reading it, and developed an interest that way. My granddad always had a season ticket, so I knew, obviously, he was down there all the time. He'd talk about it. But that's when my interest grew, and obviously started trying to go to a couple of matches as I got older. And as you get into an adult, you take things into your own hands, and it's kind of gone from there. But yeah, in terms of SwansCast, we started in January, obviously in the middle of a lockdown then. Just thought personally there was a bit of a gap in the market for Swans fans with like a discussion-based podcasty, kind of like yourself, content. So there's a couple of people doing vlogs and that sort of thing, but we wanted to be more of a talking about what's going on. And decided to start a YouTube channel and podcast and see where it goes, but it's been a good start. So thanks for everyone who's been following us, and happy to take part in your own podcast as well.
Oh, thank you for coming. You've certainly got rave reviews already with people enjoying your voice built for radio.
Well, what can I say?
So you've obviously been a kind of squad defying expectations in previous years to reach the playoffs, but this kind of pre-season there was significant change quite late in the day of the pre-season as well. So what did you expect from Swansea coming into the season, and how do you feel about it so far?
Our expectations coming into the season were, considering our last couple of years, pretty low, I'd imagine. When I tell you what it is, you'd think it was pretty low. So obviously you mentioned the playoffs, back-to-back playoffs. We just missed out the year before as well under Graham Potter. But with the season, the pre-season, a lot of transition, a lot of disruption, and up in the air a little bit, it kind of was. We kind of settled ourselves in the podcast. We had a discussion about the table. I think our expectations were around the middle. So where we are now, really, I wouldn't be surprised if that's where we finish. But I will say, I know we go on to this, probably a little bit ahead of where I thought we would be. So that means perhaps we could push on. Regardless, I think the fan base, the expectations were lower. We had 2 years of Steve Cooper. Some people liked this football a lot, didn't so much. And we're quite happy to maybe move on and try going back to our roots, if you like, and playing a more passing brand. But there's a big kind of upheaval and overhaul required to do so. And Russell Martin coming in very late. He came in the week before the season kicked off and didn't have any pre-season friendlies. Kind of made things difficult in terms of didn't know where we were. There was no cohesion in the squad going into the season. Fitness was all over the place because Steve Cooper left quite late as well. Even though he'd already agreed with the club to leave, he stayed on for a couple of weeks to train the lads and then went. Quite mad, really. Bit of a weird situation. So not the best start, but things are turning around the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously Martin coming in to replace Cooper. Both have different sort of styles of football. Martin obviously a possession-based game, as is brought to Swansea as well. Me and Conor were discussing whether he set League One of light in terms of his brand of football and what MK Dons achieved. And Conor was right in some respects. He didn't really achieve anything specifically on paper, but towards the end of his tenure at MK Dons, he started building something special towards the end of last season. And they were my tip for potentially finishing in the top two because of the squad he was building. What would you say is brought to Swansea in terms of their key attributes, and where do you think you need to improve the most?
So since he's come to Swansea, it's difficult to sort of say the key stuff he's brought in. We've seen this type of football before, quite regular. We had Roberto Martinez, Brendan Rodgers, Michael Laudrup, the three main ones that done it quite successfully. Graham Potter obviously touched on it when he was here for a year. And did get lost then a little bit under Steve Cooper, yet still successfully. So I say lost, it's just the style. But he's kind of brought back what everyone wanted. So kind of exciting, passing, free-flowing football, which is what all the fans down here enjoyed. It's what got us to the Premier League. It's what everyone wants down here. So that's what he's brought back. Specifically, I would say it's a little bit different because we used to do it when we've done it successfully in the past with a 4-3-3 system. We're now playing this with a wing back, so it is a bit different. But he's definitely brought back possession. I think we're averaging above 60% in most games this season. Some we've touched above 70, so just keeping the ball. The pass in football, so it might be a bit slower at times, but we're keeping the ball, looking for our options, spreading the play, trying to work the other teams. And what he specifically has brought is, I don't even know sometimes if you can call our wing backs because they play so high up. As much as Cooper was doing that last year, he's kind of doing it a bit differently. So he's brought that to our game, where they are kind of our main attacking threat in a way, but that it does leave gaps. I'm sure you've highlighted or spoke about maybe where you could exploit us. Having them quite pushed far up is definitely an opportunity. So if we're moving on to weaknesses, there's one right there. Another one in terms of weaknesses, as we're transitioning, and I heard you talking about this just now, pressing us high up the pitch, rushing us, if you like, in our defence. That is where, so far this season, we have presented opportunities to other teams. Obviously, you see we lost 4-0 to Bournemouth in the last game. A couple of those goals were of our own doing, the last two specifically, where we're just maybe not taking the correct risks, where, the result is we're losing the ball and the opposition is scoring a goal. And that's happened a few times. We got better than we were in the first couple of weeks. I think when we're a bit tired, those things come back in a little bit more. And the other thing is creativity. So that, again, that's definitely been improving. So we've got Patterson and Perot, who have been really on form. But the first kind of half of, the first quarter of the season, we were struggling to score, which people were getting frustrated, like, is the system working? Then you've got to say, trust the system. And for me, you've got to give it time. But it's starting to tick over. But yeah, definitely creativity. If one or two key players are out, there could be problems up top end of a pitch for us.
Yeah, you've touched on quite a bit of the next points really we were going to make there. I was obviously with Swansea's performances improving, the XG4 is rising, the expected goals against is falling. Do you feel that perhaps in the early stages of Martin's spell, you were kind of having to dig out results at times while the style was still being implemented? And now do you feel like the style is kind of there and the system's prominent and the players know what they're doing now? And do you really think you're kind of getting into the full flow of what he was trying to do initially?
Yeah, well, it's probably not what you want to hear, but I'm far more confident going into a home game. Not saying that we're going to go and win this one or anything, but the home form's definitely been better for us, and they're more confident in their ability to play this way, taking risks on the ball and not giving so much away. So you mentioned the XG change. Earlier this season, the home games, maybe we weren't so much winning all of them, but we were drawing 0-0, so we weren't conceding either. Comes to the creativity point I mentioned, where we weren't necessarily creating the right chances to score the goals. I think there is still opportunities to get at us, though. And the players are still adapting to the system. So as much as I'm saying I'm more confident going into the home game, I think there is still work to be done, if you like. And it depends on the opposition coming here, how you approach it, because some teams have come down here and they will sit back and they will allow us to pass the ball around. And all that does is allows us to kind of get out, feet in the game a little bit, get settled, pass the ball around, and then the confidence comes. We go 1-0 up and they start zipping the ball around like it's nothing. However, if you get in our faces from the first minute, push us up, and this is where the issues were earlier in the season, passing back to the keeper, but then you've got some pressure in the keeper. He tries to play it and keep the ball, whereas sometimes you think, okay, you need to get rid of it now, but they're trying to keep the ball, and that's where issues are caused. If you do that to us and you get an early goal or an early couple of chances and you can rattle us, that's when the game can maybe not be in our favour. So going away from home, that sort of thing happens a little bit more often, which is why I think we've struggled. But at our ground, teams tend to sit back and allow us to have more of the ball. So we grow into the game, got the crowd behind us, and that's why it's kind of picked up of late as well, because as soon as they get into a rhythm, they seem to be able to knock in a couple of goals.
Yeah, that's. I think that's encouraging for us from a Blackpool point of view, because Neil Critchley's side is very much based around getting in people's faces, trying to win the ball back. Yeah. He enjoys having pressing forwards and really fast, explosive wingers like Keshi Anderson, Josh Bowler, who can exploit that space in behind the wing back. So I don't know. I'm feeling a little bit encouraged.
I was going to say,
by
I
what you're
feel
saying.
a bit better now. I think, like you said, I think also we've kind of learned our lesson from the Sheffield United game. We were a bit standoffish in the first half at Sheffield United, and we kind of paid for that in terms of the amount of chances they created. So, if anything, I think we're more likely to come out in that aggressive fashion with pressing forwards. And I think going back to the last season when we played against Russell Martins and Kidons, it was kind of the perfect match for how Critchley was wanting to play. So it will be an interesting game to see how that sort of happened when they go a step above, whether we're able to continue the same sort of thing against a better quality of player.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll add on it, like if the press isn't right, that can also play into our hands. Then it's got to be, everyone's got to be doing it together, and it's got to be right, because as soon as one person doesn't join in the correct place and we find that pass to that gap, that's when we're then able to attack really well going forward, and we'll push straight up the other end to create a chance. So and I guess that's the system he wants to do, and he wants to invite pressure on to play through it, because that's when the gaps happen at the back. But that's what I mean. The press has got to be spot on. And I know you mentioned it about MK Dons. I don't want to put them down on nothing. I think obviously, I said it surprised me how quick he's implemented the system here. It is getting better than it was earlier in the weeks, where some of these problems I'm talking about were more apparent. I think the players here, some of them would have done this style of football before, so they've adapted quicker, and maybe Championship and some that did play in the Premier League have a little bit more experience and have adapted quicker, which maybe is allowing him to implement his system that he's trying to do at MK Dons maybe a little bit more successfully. But yeah, the press, if you get a spot on, definitely could work out really well for you, but it's got to be a good press from the whole team.
Yeah, I think just sort of pointing on that, I think there's a lot of. I look at Olivier and Cham, who's signed for yourselves. I follow Celtic as well, and he sort of played his best football in that sort of system under Brendan Rodgers, and it was very much about, as you say, keeping the ball in your areas, sort of inviting the press on, and then playing through the thirds. And that's where I think he's one of the best passers of the ball that we've probably had in the past 10 years. He just wasn't consistent enough in Celtic's side, but in the Championship, I think that he's that sort of. I think that's what we lack, particularly when that's why we sometimes play a direct forward to kind of bypass the midfield at times if we have to break through a press, because we're not necessarily got the on the ball quality to that level where you can pick a pass out and play it through the thirds into areas. So that, I think, if anyone's going to be the difference maker, personally from my perspective, it would be a player like Ncham or other ball players that you've got in your side, because you have quite a few of them.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we've had an excellent question from John in the comments that I'm going to be bringing up, and it just says, Cardiff to be relegated. Your thoughts?
I mean, they're not doing the best at the moment, are they? We had a nice little win over them in our derby match, which was that was a good day. But I think they've just got their new manager as the guy that was doing the caretaker role. Was he the assistant there?
Yes.
I think they're in a bit of trouble, perhaps, with money. With the parachutes. They've had the case with Salah. That's obviously not a good situation for them. That looks like maybe it's getting resolved. So I think they really need to try and cement a style, because it seems to be kind of like a continuous thing for them, where they get the same style of football in, like a Neil Warnock. It works for a season and a half. Then it doesn't work anymore. Get rid of him, and then they do the same thing. Get another manager that does the same thing, and that's happened for like the last 4 managers. And I mean, again, a year ago they were sacking. I can't even remember the last one was now, but yeah, like as a Swansea fan, obviously going to be smiling about it, but I don't want to say too much, because the new guy could change things. I don't know if you know the history there, but neither side's never done the double. So we've got a good opportunity this year. So got to try and push.
Fair enough. We certainly don't want to jinx that amazing opportunity for you to.
No, we don't want to jinx
having
it.
A historic.
That's why
achievement.
I don't want to say nothing about the guy, because he might be a class manager now and change the football up and bring them out of the doldrums. They have had a slight change of form, because they were just losing every match. But yeah, we'll see.
But now they're not losing every match. They're
they won the last one and they drew against Stoke, didn't they, when they went like 3-0 down or something. So I mean, that's decent comeback.
Well, I must say we're very impressed because if you'd asked any of that question to us about Preston, we would just been smug and gloating. So you're clearly a much better than us.
Yeah, well, if we get that double done, then that will come out. But you can't. You got to watch what you say when it's being recorded because it comes back to haunt you on Twitter, doesn't it?
Fair enough.
So
we've got some, like I say, very well informed conversation about Cardiff there. Stretching it out, have you seen much of Blackpool so far this season? What are your impressions of us?
I'll be honest, I've not seen an awful lot. However, what I will say is I'm very, I think, pleasantly surprised how well you're doing so far. So not because of anything Blackpool specific, but obviously coming up from League One, being 10th in the league, and your form is pretty good as well the last couple of matches. Good memories of when you guys got to the Premier League, Ian Holloway and all that sort of stuff. I think I used to play a lot of Football Manager, and I used to love to get Charlie Adams signed, but don't know how much of a favourite he is for you or anything. But it'd be nice to see you guys get back up there. And it's nice to see a different team doing well, if that makes sense, because you get the ones who've been in the Championship for a while. I guess maybe we could fall into a category for certain teams of that sort of bracket, and it's nice to see other teams come up and do well. And do you know what? I would love to go to Blackpool away. It sounds like hell of an away day.
Well, we would love to host you.
if it happens, I'll let you know.
All right. And then finally, the time-honoured tradition, I think, for preview shows everywhere, score and match prediction.
Okay, so the theme of our recent form, because we've had, I think, 2 triple game weeks, if you like, so like weekend, midweek, weekend, where we won the first 2 and lost the third one. And on our podcast, we'll be discussing why that might be, and I think tiredness comes into it. Coming off an international break, going into a home match, I'm quite confident that we're going to be up for this and firing on all cylinders. And I'm not sure if you follow international football much, but Wales obviously just got a playoff spot as well in the World Cup draw, which is a bit of good feeling around the place and around the club. Obviously, there's a couple of players that'll be involved in that setup or friends otherwise. So I think I'm positive, but I am also cautious because you guys got good form. But I'm going to say a 2-1 win for the Swans. I don't know if we'll keep a clean sheet. I think your press will get something. You'll get some opportunities out of that. But I'm confident we've got some good goal-scoring form with Patterson and Perot specifically, who tend to assist each other with their own goals. I think they'll get 1 each again to keep the trend going of their good form.
Excellent. So, you're predicting a 2-1 win to the Swans. Sean, are you equally optimistic about your club, our club, I should say?
Yeah, I was going to say just my specific club. I was going to say, obviously, I said about I wasn't too sure, but as we've gone on and as you've kind of thought about it more, it does seem to set up to the way we like to play. I think if Keogh had been fit, I would have been sort of nailed on. Perhaps we will probably go and win this game. And to be honest, I'm going to go for a 1-0 for us. I think that it will be quite a tight game. I think that we'll be patient in the press. We'll wait for triggers and the right time to press. And I think that's important, that what we've improved recently is knowing when to press rather than just pressing for pressing's sake. And there are some really good ball players in that Swansea side who may well unpick us, but I trust in Marvin and the like at the back that they'll be able to put on a good defensive showing. So why not? We'll win 1-0, Jerry Yates.
All right. Your thoughts, Tom?
Buck the trend of victories. I've said a draw for the last couple of, or since the QPR game. I just think the way that I'll go 2-2 because I think there'll be more than 1 goal for each side. So that's really obvious, that, isn't it? But high scoring game, and I think Swansea can be clinical and as we've said, they come into form a little bit more despite their last match. I think 12 points from the last 18. Sit third in the form guide. We've dropped to about 7th. I think a draw would be a respectable score, but I think it'd be a very entertaining game.
So far we've got the full suite. We've got a Blackpool win, a Swansea win, and a draw. I'm going to tilt the favour slightly in the direction of a Blackpool win, as I always do, and I'm going to say 3-1 to Blackpool.
Oh, Jesus.
I know.
Fair play if you come here and score 3, but
I was going to say, if that happens, I'm booking that Premier Inn outside Wembley like no tomorrow, straight away.
What, to watch the other teams play in the playoffs? Or...
Oh, here it is.
Well, I think about our press, and I think about, maybe I'm biased because a few times I have seen Swansea. I think I saw that game against Bournemouth you referenced, and I saw the game against Blackburn at the very beginning of the season where it just felt that you gifted Blackburn goal after goal. So I'm hoping
two bad examples, but I mean, hopefully that's not a replacement.
It suits his agenda.
Yeah, I'm maybe cherry picking my sample based on what I've seen.
I've watched 2 games you didn't play well in.
I mean, we actually gave Bournemouth a good game for half of it. It's just Bournemouth, and they're the top of the league for a reason. So I'm not too disheartened about the 4-0, but we'll see on Saturday, I guess.
Yeah. Blackpool drew with Bournemouth. Bournemouth beat Swansea. Therefore, by transitive properties, Blackpool must win this game.
I was going to say it could have quite easily been about 4 or 5. To be fair, in the first half when we played Bournemouth to Bournemouth, they just weren't as clinical, and then second half we completely turned them over, really, didn't we? So it'll be interesting to see if that sort of correlates.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's hope that theory is null and void for myself. So you will be hoping for it. Like, if you come here to score 3, though, fair play, you deserve to win. Our defense isn't like it was under Cooper, but it's still decent.
I'm just giving you plenty of ammunition to gloat on the SwansCast, post-match show on Monday.
Yeah.
Right. Head to head. This is a little section where we look about previous games. There are lots of people in the comments referencing a certain 6-3 win to Blackpool in 2007. The stats are of the previous 33 times we've played each other. Blackpool have won 14, Blackpool have lost 13, and we've drawn 16. So traditionally, all the way going back to 1926 when we first played each other, a very, very tight contest. Although in recent years, more and more of the results have favoured us. And now I need to figure out how to share my screen. There we go. No, I've got it. There we go. No idea how to zoom in.
A lot of wins there.
Yeah, a lot of wins there in recent years, going back to 1992.
Pinch your mouse pad.
I can't believe we haven't played Swansea since 2010 because it's just we have had some memorable games, so it seems like such a long time.
That 2010 game was up there with the 6-3, obviously for obvious reasons, but
yeah,
we were absolutely sensational that day.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think who the manager for us was at the time, whether it was Paulo Sousa or Martinez.
Sousa. I think it was Sousa because I remember at the time it was like a really important game for us to sort of go, oh wow, we are still in a hunt for the playoffs. And Holloway came out after the game and said we'd reached our relegation points tally when we were like 2 points off the playoffs, because he would all throughout the season he would always say we've got to reach 52 points to combat relegation while we're on that run to get into the Premier League. So yeah, it was Sousa at the time, because I think he was saying about the pitch after the game and that we were kind of used to the pitch and Swansea weren't necessarily used to it themselves.
Yeah, and then was it long after that you got Stephen Dobby, or was that a bit after you came back down? Was it?
I thought that was promote. I thought he was part of that promotion-winning squad.
Oh, he might have been on loan actually because Sousa didn't like him. That actually probably is true. I think he had 6 months here, went out on loan in January, perhaps, was it? To you guys? Scored in Wembley.
Yeah, he definitely joined us for half the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he came back to us and we went up the year after then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. But yeah, so let's hoping that Blackpool's continues their unbeaten streak against Swansea, stretching back to 2005. 16 years since Swansea have beaten Blackpool.
Look, it's over 10 years.
You're certainly due a win. Oh, right. I will take that screen away. And then we'll just move on to the nice little trip down nostalgia lane that is They Played for Both. And indeed, you've already helped us out with one there, Luke, with Stephen Dobby. part of the squad that earned Blackpool promotion. Was he any good for Swansea?
Oh yeah, he's one of them unsung heroes. I think people definitely appreciated him while he was here. He had a really good season. The year the week went up, he also scored in the playoff final for us. One of the biggest shames, really, that he didn't have the fairest of crack when we went to the Premier League. He started against Man City in our first game. He hit the post in that game, actually, when we lost 4-0. But kind of fell out of favour under Brendan Rodgers and ended up going on to other things. I think he might have gone back to you guys at some point. But
he went to Palace, I think, under Holloway as well.
Yeah, I would like to have seen him more in the Premier League, but it was one of those that got away. But appreciate what he did to get us there in the first place.
I say one of those players we signed him on four separate occasions, and not one of them was a permanent deal. I think
he was still scoring the goals up in Scotland, like your last year.
He's back down here. He's at AFC Fylde this season, so he's still about. But yeah, he's scoring those Queen of the South.
Getting back. Put it back in the game or something. All right, Tom, any other day played for both springs to your mind?
Yeah, more recent one is John-Jules. Scored some quality goals for us.
Is he on loan, perhaps from Liverpool? Was there? Or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
We only ever get those players on loan.
He scored a cracking goal, I think, in the big win against Leeds. I think Bristol City scored near from the halfway line with that free kick, didn't he? But it was just a quality midfielder and kind of stagnated at Newcastle a little bit, but he's obviously a very talented footballer.
Yeah, I'd agree. He's one that I think hurts me. Not hurts me, but I wish he didn't leave. But there were circumstances about. I think we needed money, and he was one of the ones that was easy to sell. Who could the board could kind of make an agenda that suited the fans to get on board with at the time. It was when just before Gary Monk got sacked, and we had a bit of a bad run. Basically, Shelby was ever present in our squad, started all our games, had a yellow card ban. When you get too many and you have a match out, all of a sudden he's not in the match day squad. So I think it's something up there. I think he just recently got an England cap as well in the previous international break. So I think the money was, England cap, midfielder. We're quite stocked in that area. We can get a decent fee for him here. Needed to balance the book sort of thing. And he played in a match against Oxford in the League Cup, which we actually ended up losing 3-2. Went over and argued with some fans because I think they were having a go at him. And he was basically like, well, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Next thing you know, he was gone. So, yeah. I think it all came out afterwards that it was a bit dodgy. But, yeah, he was good when he was here.
Yeah, and he was good at Blackpool as well. I think scored 6 goals in 10 games is what Wikipedia told me, which was actually apparently his most prolific season. He's not scored more than 6 goals in the campaign since. So John-Jules, come back to Blackpool, and let the Renaissance begin.
That's we played him a bit further forward,
midfield shortage.
Yeah, John-Jules. I was going to say we played him a bit further forward that season quite a lot, and seemed to work really well there. And that free kick, man, that was so bizarre. I just kind of turned away and then realised it gone in. Well, it sort of went along the ground. It didn't once leave the floor. It just sort of drilled it along the floor, and it just appeared in the bottom corner. And you're like, oh, this has happened.
I'm about to go and have a look at that on YouTube now.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, and then I'll give us one more before we disband, because my laptop is running out of battery, and I don't want to leave in a rude way. But I'll give us one more, which is Kevin Moore. This was my favourite one I found on Wikipedia, who was part of Swansea City's 1977 to 78 promotion success, and was actually the son of former Blackpool club president Len Moore. There you go. That is my favourite tenuous they played for both link.
Can't comment too much on him, as that's well before my time. But I'll ask some of my elders in the family if they remember.
Those of a certain vintage, as others in this podcast are very, very fond of saying. Right, we're 5 minutes over the half-hour mark, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very, very much, Luke, for joining us.
Thank you for having
your
me.
informed insights. And thank you, Sean and Tom, for joining us as ever. Please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit all those buttons that get all our content to you faster, including on the podcast. And we will see you all soon. Up the pool.
Up the pool.